Hello, welcome back to Gunfighter Life. As always, I'm your host, Michael Melito. First and foremost, I am a Christian. God is number one, and I try to recognize that in everything that I do. This podcast is no different. You don't have to be a Christian to listen, but to just know that I come at everything from that perspective. This podcast is no different, and I make no apologies for that. Let's start out. I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting at a very early age. And I did my first formal shooting competition back in 1998. I've competed in everything from precision rifle to action pistol, USPSA, IDPA, Steel Challenge. You don't need to know what those are, but I've been very blessed to win a lot of competitions, state championships, regional championships, and a couple of different disciplines. I've competed in muzzleloader, archery as well, shotgun, you name it. I've been very blessed to compete in it. I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I did 2 full combat tours, the initial invasion of Iraq, and then again another tour later on. So, by God's grace, He got me out of that alive. After that, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps. After that, I went to work for LAPD, where I worked some of the nastiest streets in the country, where by God's grace, again, He brought me out in one piece. I served in the U.S. Army both full-time and part-time after the Marine Corps and after LAPD. Let's see, what else? I was a private contractor for let's just say I was a private contractor at if I said the name, you would know it. I won't get into that, but I did that, and I professionally taught people how to shoot in that organization. As far as firearms instruction goes, I'm an NRA certified firearms instructor, FBI certified firearms instructor, a bunch of other 3-letter government agencies certified. And then I've done that for years, both full-time and then as part of my other jobs. Right before I started doing what I'm doing now, which is trying to start my own business, I was the commander of a tactical team in a very large metropolitan area. It was an SRT team, Special Response Team. You might recognize it as a SWAT team. The average civilian would probably call it a SWAT team. But Special Response Team for active shooters, I was very blessed to be the commander of that and work with some very good guys. I left that to come move out in the country to get back to hunting and fishing and shooting and being in the country. I am right now a full-time... let's just say I hunt and guide professionally. I do that. That's my full-time job. I got back to my roots, hunting and shooting professionally. So, that is what I do. So, today's episode is going to be about hunting rifles, big game hunting rifles for the first time hunter or somebody getting into hunting or doesn't know a lot about hunting rifles. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. With the caveat is if you're just starting out in hunting and you don't have a professional guide or somebody to show you the ropes, you may want to start somewhere else like grouse hunting or dove hunting or coyote hunting. Probably not waterfowl because there's so many regulations. But something else that's a little bit easier to hunt might be easier than big game because that can be a hard thing to get into and a hard thing to do. You may hunt. Some people hunt for years and never take anything. So that might not be very encouraging just starting out unless, like I said, you have somebody to show you the ropes. And we'll get into that. I'll mention that later in the podcast episode. But let's start off with big game hunting rifles. And I guess you don't have to be a beginner. It could be for anybody looking for your next rifle, just good solid choices. But big game hunting rifles, here we go. So, first of all, before I give you like a hunting rifle, understand that the reason I do this podcast is I have a lot of first-hand experience. I've hunted I don't know how many big game animals and killed I don't know how many big game animals, from bear to elk to deer, all different kinds of deer, mule deer, whitetail deer, exotic deer like fallow deer. I've been very blessed to take more big game animals, honestly, than I can remember. I've tried to think about it and put a number on it, and I honestly can't. And that tells you how many that I have honestly taken and recovered and killed. I've professionally guided and just guided for fun and hunted. And I'm a professional hunter now and guide, which not a lot of people in the 21st century can say. But just know that everybody has their own opinions. The reason I do this podcast is because I'm trying to come at it from a real-world perspective. not just theoretical things. But there's not one perfect hunting rifle and one perfect hunting cartridge. If there was, then everybody would have that one thing, and we wouldn't be having this talk. So just know that just because I mention something or don't mention something doesn't mean that your rifle is bad or your choice is bad. But before I give you specific picks, what I would say is, where are you going to hunt, what are you going to hunt, and how are you going to hunt? Are you going to hunt east of the Mississippi or west of the Mississippi? Because those are kind of totally different. With some exceptions. I mean, there are some big animals up in like Maine, which I guess is east of the Mississippi technically, so you could still hunt moose there, so that might not apply. But generally speaking, if you live east of the Mississippi River in the U.S., if you're going to hunt medium game, by medium I mean whitetail and black bear would be the biggest that you would hunt, east of the Mississippi, then I would go ahead and say, for my first pick for a hunting rifle, 243. 243 is a great first pick. I don't care who says it's a kid's rifle or a woman's rifle or whatever. 243 for medium game is all you ever need. And if you don't get it done with a 243, it's your fault, not the gun's fault, assuming your mounts are solid and your gun's sighted in, your ammunition choice is not ridiculous. Like you're not shooting a deer with a 40-something grain bullet or something like that. So with those caveats, if you can't get it done with a 243 on medium game, that's your deal. It's not the gun's deal. And 243 is an outstanding caliber. I've hunted all over the U.S. with it. I've taken I don't know how many deer, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know other people that have I don't know how many times I've taken other people hunting and used a 243 successfully. 243 is a great caliber. I have taken more than one elk with it. Would I say it's the ideal elk caliber? No, I would not say that, but I would say it's definitely capable. And I would say if you live east of the Mississippi and you're mostly going to be hunting medium game and down, 243 is an outstanding choice. I mean, just rock solid, and it's a pleasure to shoot. And I would rather have somebody that practices a lot and shoots a lot and is not scared of their gun and they have good shot placement than somebody that almost never practices with a 300 mega super ultra mag whatever, fill in the blank cartridge. So 243, and I would say if you're looking for the best value, the best choice, my go-to would be still a Remington. Despite all the drama that Remington's had recently, going bankrupt and everything else, you can still get them. A Remington 700, what I would call the Walmart version. I think it's the SPS, but if you're just looking for utility, then just a plain black synthetic stock can be had for short money, a few $100, $400 or $500, sometimes with a scope. They've been used for decades and decades. They came out in the 60s. They're pretty much unchanged. I mean, there's some probably manufacturing changes, but to the end user, besides fit and finish and stuff, very little has changed in decades. So I would say a Remington 700 243 is a great choice. Hard to beat. That would be my first go-to choice east of the Mississippi. My second choice would be a 308 30-06. A great choice. 308 30-06 will kill anything in North America. Again, if you didn't kill it with those calibers, then it wasn't the gun's fault, it was your fault. 308 30-06 east of the Mississippi, I would give the edge to the 308, because the 30-06 will edge ahead with heavier bullets. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on ballistics in this episode, but the 308 with, I would say, 150 grains and down does as good, and it does it more efficiently than the 30-06. So I would really give the edge to the 308 east of the Mississippi. So I would say that would be another good choice, as good as a 243. So the 308, again, in the Remington 700. But if you want something a little bit different, you can get it with the classic Woodstock, a satin finish, a more polished finish. If you want something a little bit nicer, then I would go with the Winchester. So Winchester has a pre-64 Model 70, which was called the Rifleman's Rifle Quintessential. And for a long time, they got cheaper in the manufacturing process, and they kind of got rid of that design, but they've recently brought it back. So anything brand new built with that control feed design, which if you don't know what that is, it'll make this podcast way too long, but it's a very reliable action. I don't use a Winchester, but I pretty much use that same kind of action, Winchester P64 action, in a more custom rifle. It's rock solid, it's dependable. I would say, that and a 308 or a 30-06 would be a great choice. If we're talking another choice, another pick, if you don't like those for big game hunting rifles, you want something like quintessentially American and classic, there is nothing wrong with a good iron-sighted 30-30 Winchester Model 94 and or a Marlin Model 336 are one of the derivatives thereof in 30-30. 30-30 is a great cartridge. East or west of the Mississippi, it's a great cartridge. It's good out to 200 yards. I don't care who thinks they're a sniper or whatever. Like I said, I professionally hunt and guide, and it is most of the shots are inside 200 yards. The vast majority are inside 200 yards. If you're not that kind of hunter, then you know that I'm not talking to you, but for most people, especially the beginning hunter, you're going to be shooting inside 200 yards, especially east of the Mississippi. Unless you own big, giant, open fields, if you're hunting on public land, inside 200 yards is going to be just fine for almost everything. And the 30-30 does great inside 200 yards. It's been around since the 1800s. It's killed who knows how many game animals. It is a great choice. East of the Mississippi, I would say an equally great choice if you like the kind of obscure, more oddball things just for the heck of it. A Marlin and 35 Remington, which is a little bit beefier round, what they would call a brush gun round, but out to 150 yards, even 200 yards, if you know your drops and stuff, it's a great round. 35 Remington has kind of a little dedicated following, especially in the East, and small pockets in different places. 35 Remington, it is great, and as far as I know, it's still produced in factory new rifles by Marlin. So the Marlin 336, either in 30-30 or 35 Remington, if you like the lever action, if you like the quick handling of it, that is a great choice. Another good choice would be a 44 Magnum and a rifle. So a 44 mag carbine, Ruger makes some good ones. Some other companies have really made some good ones. So if you're looking for something like that, even shorter range, if you hunt in really thick, brushy, swampy areas, 44 mag inside 100 yards and a rifle is great. That's a great cartridge. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk west of the Mississippi. Let's say you live west of the Mississippi, or you're going to hunt west of the Mississippi, and you're going to hunt mule deer, which, with some exceptions, tend to run bigger, and you're going to hunt elk and maybe brown bear and maybe some other stuff. I would say your first choice there would be 270. It's a great caliber, and I don't own one. I never have owned one, but I know a lot of good people that hunt with those. The 270, the 280 Remington also would be a good choice, but perfectly adequate for elk. Perfectly adequate for anything that you would want to take, especially, again, with good bullet selection, heavy for caliber bullets, a good make and good hunting choice in bullets with the 270. A great choice. When I hunted, even when I lived out west, I lived on the Canadian border in Idaho between Montana and Washington. Was very blessed to do quite a bit of hunting out there. And I still hunted with a 243 most of the time, even when I had bigger calibers. But 270 is kind of a standard out there for a reason. So unless you have a reason to choose something else, I would say 270 followed closely behind the 30-06. 30-06 308, again, pretty close to the same, but out west I would give the edge to the 30-06 because 30-06 does handle a little bit heavier bullets better. And if you're going to hunt something like a moose or something like that, you might want to bump it up to the heavier 200 grain, 180 grain, 200 grain bullets, and the 30-06 will do that a little bit better than the 308. So, but the 30-06 308 is also a great choice out west. Great choice anywhere. 280 Remington, if you're looking for something a little bit more obscure, And I will mention the 7mm Remington Magnum. It is a great all-around hunt anything in North America cartridge. With the caveat, it does have quite a bit of recoil. So it's going to be your only gun, your go-to hunting gun. And you're expecting to practice with it a lot. It really does have a lot of recoil. So if you're new to hunting, I would say probably stay away from anything Magnum. And the 7mm Rem Mag is no different. It packs quite a bit of recoil. And yeah, it's not a big deal when you're hunting, shooting 1 or 2 shots. But if you want to be a good hunter and a good shooter, you need to practice. And one, those rounds are expensive. A lot more so than, let's say, a 243 or a 308. And number two, you're not probably putting 50 rounds of 7 Rem Mag through a rifle in a day. So I would say it's a good all-around North American hunting cartridge, yes. Would it be my first choice for a beginner? No. But I'll mention it because it is a great round for a reason. The 280 Remington is a lot more efficient. You're still throwing the same exact bullet as the 7 Rem Mag, but it's a lot more efficient, a lot less recoil. So I would say look at that cartridge as well. Again, Remington 700 or a Winchester Model 70. Take your pick of fit and finish. But those would be my go-to. Bolt action hunting rifle would be my go-to. If you want something else for nostalgia, if you want a lever action, that's great. If you're out west, I would say look at the BLR, the Browning lever action. I won't get into why, but you can shoot more aerodynamic bullets out of it. You can get it in a 270, you can get it in a 30-06, and you can get a lever action if you want it. And if you want something a little niche, a little different, I would say look at the Remington East or West Coast. Look at the Remington 7600 and the 7400, or the 760 or 740. There's kind of different iterations of the same gun. One's a pump and one's a semi-auto, made by Remington. But they point really well, they handle really well, and they are great guns. In fact, my best friend, the only hunting rifle I think that he owns is a Remington 760, which is a pump action in a 270. I mean, it's just a great rifle. It's fast handling, it's good, they're plenty accurate. So there are reasons you might want to go with something other than a bolt action, maybe just because you want something other than a bolt action. But there's a reason that most hunters use a bolt action rifle. They have a reasonable rate of fire, they are inherently accurate, they are, they're rock solid, they are, anything mechanical can break, but they have very few moving parts, they're inherently accurate, they have a reasonable rate of fire, there's a reason that they are kind of the go-to. So I would say those are my go-to. And then my other thing is, how are you going to hunt? If you're just going to hunt from a stand, if you're just going to hunt in a deer stand, like you own a piece of property, or you have a buddy that owns a piece of property, and you're only ever going to hunt 5 acres, and I'm not putting this down, there's nothing wrong with that, then it really doesn't matter how much your gun weighs, because you're only going to carry it a short distance and walk up into a stand. My favorite way to hunt, and the way that I like to hunt, is spot and stalk. So if you're spotting and stalking and you're going to be walking a lot, especially out west, where you have a lot of mountains and hills and up and down, and you might walk for days and days, weight really does make a difference. So I would say look at the weight of the rifle. You know, you don't want a big giant bull barrel. You don't need to be able to shoot 10 rounds. You shouldn't be able to need to shoot 10 rounds hunting and stalking big game. So you don't need that big bull barrel. You don't need, that giant scope. So really pay attention to the weight of the rifle. Like I said, when I lived out west, I had bigger calibers, but I generally went to the 243 that I had because it was a youth model, which I bought a youth model on purpose. It was very light, it was very handy, it was shorter, and it was just easier to carry all the time. And when you're hunting, especially if you're spotting and stalking, you're carrying that rifle a lot more than you're shooting that rifle. So that makes a big difference. So I would say pay attention to the weight. What kind of hunting are you going to be doing? Driven hunts, that's the thing. Are you going to expect to shoot animals that are on the move, that are moving? If you're going to be hunting somewhere that generally hunts, like I said, in a tree stand with a feeder where you know the distance, then you're talking about a different kind of rifle. And if you're going to be spotting and stalking and what they call still hunting, which is another way that I like to hunt, which we won't get into the techniques, but just kind of look at that. And I would say if you don't really know, you might do a couple of different things. Keep your rifle under 8 pounds, and and there is a trade-off. Like I said, the lighter you go, the more recoil you're going to feel on that rifle for a given cartridge. That's kind of why I started off with the 243, because you can get it in a very light rifle. And you can get it in a very light rifle, and it still won't beat you up in recoil. And it will kill any medium game just fine. Like I said, if you didn't kill the medium game with a 243, from black bear to any kind of deer and down, it was your fault, probably not the cartridge's fault. I've seen plenty of animals drop with a 243, and I've seen plenty of animals not drop with big giant magnums that people have shot, because shot placement is much more important, and being good and proficient with it is more important, and practice is more important than the caliber. But I would say start there. And I would say that I would applaud anybody who wants to get started with iron sights, but most even new hunting rifles, they don't even come with iron sights. And optics have come a long way, and most people go with a 3-9. 3-9 is kind of your standard rifle hunting scope optic. That's not my go-to and not my standard. Maybe we'll get into that another time. We'll go on optics in another podcast. That's not my choice, so I guess you'll have to listen to the next episode if you want to hear about that. Hopefully today has helped you out if you're new to hunting. Like I said, I recently went out to start my own business venture. It's called Good Shepherd Training. I'll put a link in the show notes. Actually, I believe there's a link to it in the podcast itself, but I'll try and put a link to it in the show notes. Good Shepherd Training. You can look it up on Instagram, Good Shepherd Training. You can look it up on Facebook, Good Shepherd Training. You can visit the website link that I'll put in the show notes. One of the big reasons I left a good paying job in the city, kind of a dream job, the commander of a tactical team, and to come out in the country, kind of in the woods in the middle of nowhere, is I really want to teach people that don't know how to hunt, and people that don't know how to shoot, how to shoot. I really love to do that. So if you'd like to learn how to do that, you can reach out to me. My real life everyday email, if you want to get a hold of me directly, is Milito, my last name, MILITO227@gmail.com. MILITO227@gmail.com. I do this podcast for free, so don't feel bad about plugging the business that I'm starting. We do learn to hunt classes. That's kind of one of the main things that I'm starting out doing. It'll include a harvest. It'll include shooting something. It will include gutting it and skinning it. It will include learning how to track, learning how to hunt, learning how to dress, learning how to read the wind. All those things will be included. So you're interested in learning that from me, I would encourage you to get in contact with me. Like I said, my everyday email, MILITO227@gmail.com. We can do that any time of year, because I'm very blessed to live and work on a ranch that has private game, which means you can hunt it any time of the year without a license, which gives me the opportunity, the blessing to be able to teach people how to hunt any time of the year without any tags, without needing anything. So if that's something you're interested in, get a hold of me. Or also, if you just want a question answered, feel free to reach out to me. If you want prayer, or if you are thinking like, I'm trying to decide between this rifle and this rifle, I'm going to hunt X, Y, and then maybe one day I'll hunt Z, then, send me that question, and then I'll be happy to answer it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed listening to today's episode. Thanks, and have a blessed day.